You're in the CNN newsroom. I'm Jessica Dean in Washington. Any minute now, President Trump expected to slap new tariffs on some of America's biggest trading partners in a move that nearly all economists warn would likely lead to higher prices. Trump has promised 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% higher tariffs on goods imported from China. Tariffs, of course, essentially a tax. When a foreign company makes goods to be sold in the United States, a company pays a tariff on them when they reach the United States. And then that U.S. company sells the goods that pay the tariff to Treasury. Usually companies pass that extra cost onto the person buying the product, that's you, the American consumer, by raising prices. CNN's Elena Trine is live in West Palm Beach, Florida now. Elena, we have been waiting to hear from the White House on more specifics about exactly what products these tariffs will cover. What more are you hearing?
Right. Well, we are hearing that really any minute now, very imminently, we are going to be getting more details on the specifics, Jessica, of these tariffs. We know the president is set to sign these any moment now if he hasn't already. But look, I think no one should be surprised that he is carrying out this directive. This has long been a top priority for Donald Trump, a key pillar of his economic plan, something he touted repeatedly on the campaign trail. But it's also something that the president believes that he used effectively during his first term. Now, one thing to keep in mind, of course, is the impact this is going to have on American consumers. It's something actually the president even acknowledged yesterday while talking to reporters in the Oval Office. He said that there could be some sort of short-term temporary disruption, but he believed that people would be patient to see it through. Now, again, I do want to just share with you that despite all of this, we know that from Capitol Hill to Wall Street, as well as from Ottawa to Mexico City, many people have been hoping that Donald Trump would not follow through on this promise, that he wouldn't continue with that threat. But as we know, this is happening and it's going to be moving forward at any moment now. Another thing I just want to point out, Jessica, is that this is one of the few things, one of the few real policy beliefs that Donald Trump has held long before he ever sought political office. Back when he was a real estate developer, he was a big believer in tariffs. And so this is, again, something that he genuinely believes is going to help the American people, despite what we have heard from many economists sounding the alarm on how some of the costs from these tariffs will be taken down and carried to consumers directly. Jessica?
All right, Elena Trine, keep an eye on that. And we will, of course, keep an eye on you as well and come back to you as we get that breaking news. Thank you very much. And joining us now, Larry Summers, the former Treasury Secretary under President Bill Clinton and former director for the National Economic Forum under President Obama. Of course, we are still awaiting this White House announcement, which we are expecting at any moment. If you can just help me, I'm listening to this, and here's the thing. The president acknowledges that there could be what he calls a short-term problem, that it would hurt a little and then it's going to be great and that people will be patient. But it would seem to me, walking through all of this, that if these do go into effect for everyday items, that the prices are going to be passed on to consumers when they are complaining that prices are already too high. Help me kind of square that circle.
This is a stop or I'll shoot myself in the foot kind of threat policy. It defies economic logic. It means higher prices for consumers. It means much more expensive inputs for American producers. Think about the way car manufacturing happens in North America. The car in the process of being produced goes back and forth across the border 5 times, 10 times. Every time there's going to be some kind of tariff. What that's going to do is make the North American companies and the North American jobs less competitive relative to what's happening in Europe or China or Japan. There's no real economic logic to this. Yes, we've got all kinds of issues that have real justification with respect to Mexico on drug cartels and the like. Whether this is the right thing to do with respect to Mexico, I think there are a lot of questions and doubts that somebody could have. But Canada, why, of all the countries in the world, would we right now be deciding to launch economic war on Canada? Canada, where the minimum wage, basic wages are higher, where there's more union protection for workers than there is here. I just do not get the logic of these policies. And make no mistake, this is a regressive tax on American consumers.
And so you mentioned Canada. I want to stay with that for a second, because you're right to say that Canada and Mexico, the borders with both of those countries are very different. There is a false equivalency that's being kind of held here with what's going on at those two borders. The government did a study on fentanyl coming in from the northern border. It is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage versus what's coming in through the southern border. And it seems to me that Canada itself and its government is confused by what exactly it's supposed to be doing to try to reverse or waive off these tariffs.
You cannot fathom the logic of launching this kind of economic war on traditionally our longest standing ally. The Trump administration was on solid ground when it was very critical of the Biden administration for canceling the Keystone Pipeline, which after all was a way of moving oil from natural gas from Canada to the United States. That was about more imports. That was about strengthening North America, and that was their policy. Why dividing our allies and uniting our enemies could possibly be good strategy, I'm afraid I just cannot understand. And it's not just higher prices. This is going to cost us jobs. It's going to cost us jobs because the inputs that go into what we sell to Americans, the inputs that go to what we sell in Europe, what we sell in Asia, all of that is going to be made more expensive because of these tariffs. And so I just cannot see why this is a strategy that is being pursued. It's a famous thing that economists disagree about just about everything. Just about all economists agree that raising tariffs to the highest level they've been at for the United States on an across-the-board basis since just after the Second World War, that's a mistake, is a proposition that I guess 95% of economists agree with, and it takes a lot to unite the economics profession.
And we can tell everyone now, just while you were talking there, Trump has announced those new tariffs are in place. So this has happened. Again, 25% on Mexico and Canada, 10% additional tariff on China. They say for illegal fentanyl, they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. Larry, help us understand, there's now not only the threat of rising prices for Americans, but in terms of global, a trade war, is this kind of the starting shot? What does that look like to you?
It's before you get to what anybody else does, there's higher prices for American consumers, and there's higher input costs for American producers, making production everywhere else more attractive. And then how can these countries not respond? And they're going to respond by favoring European products over American products. They're going to respond by favoring Asian products over American products. That's not going to work to our advantage either. They're going to expand by welcoming investment from other countries rather than the United States. This is done with no context. Whether there's legal authority for it or not is something I will leave to the trade lawyers. I think it's very much in doubt when there's no broad economic emergency and when there's no evidence that the goods being tariffed have been heavily subsidized. But I'll leave that to the trade lawyers. But it seems to me that this is going to make every other country want to separate from us because of the kind of tactics that we are engaging in. So I just do not understand why this kind of economic warfare is good strategy. And if you're going to use economic warfare as a strategy, I don't understand why you're doing it more to Canada and Mexico than to China. And I don't understand why our initial targets of attacks are Canada and Mexico. This is just a bizarre and I think quite dangerous economic strategy for our country.
We are told to be on the lookout for a statement he's going to speak, Justin Trudeau, here in just a little bit. He said that Canada is ready to retaliate. What might that look like?
We would imagine that what the Canadians and perhaps what also the Mexicans will do is identify U.S. products that are being exported to Canada and putting substantial penalty on those producers. And I imagine they'll do it in a way that's designed to cause as much economic pain to the United States as they possibly can. Again, why? I understand that it's not just a world where everybody loves each other, where it's all just about everybody cooperating. I understand that the United States has to stand up for itself, that we've got to be tough in defense of our interests. But of all those to be tough with, why exactly are we choosing Canada? I think that's the question that the president needs to explain to the American people. This has been the country that for a century has stood with us in every conflict that we have been in, that has been on our side when the issues have involved China or have involved Europe. Why are we choosing to attack them right now? And if we were able to cause substantial economic pain in Mexico, do they believe that that would reduce immigration flows into our country? I would imagine it would have the opposite effect of increasing the pressures on our border. I imagine this will encourage the Mexicans to invite Chinese producers to produce in Mexico in order to export to the rest of the world rather than to export to the United States. So I think that the president owes the country an explanation of why we are pursuing this strategy. I'm not I'm not at this moment challenging the president's nationalist economic approach. Even if you took that as a given, why are we launching this attack on our North American allies as the opening major foreign policy move of a new administration? It's just very, very hard for me to understand.
All right, Larry Summers, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I want to go back to Elena Treen now, who is in West Palm Beach. Let's touch base with her now that these tariffs, Elena, have been signed, and we are learning more information. Just to remind everybody, 25% on Mexico and Canada, an additional 10% on Chinese products. This is going to affect fruits, vegetables at the grocery store. It could likely affect car prices, sneakers for a lot of people. These are the kinds of things that could likely be included. But what more are you learning? Because we still need more details on all of this, especially when they go into effect.
That's exactly right, Jessica. And yes, the president has signed these tariffs. And I want to be very clear. It's a 25% tariff on all imports, all goods coming from Mexico and Canada. I want to add, though, with Canada, there is one exception. This is according to a White House fact sheet that I obtained regarding the details of these tariffs. The one exception on Canada would be on energy and oil. I'm told that there's a 10% energy resources from Canada will have a lower 10% tariff. So still being tariffed, but at a lower rate. Otherwise, though, all goods coming from our northern and southern border will be in effect immediately. Now, also, as you mentioned, a 10% tariff on China. Now, another key thing that we didn't really know about until these tariffs were signed is that there is a retaliation clause. I am told essentially that these tariffs could be increased at any time, particularly seeing whether or not if any of these countries decide to retaliate to the president's directive here with their own tariffs, and that could potentially bring these prices and these tariffs even higher. Now, one thing from this fact sheet as well, I do want to read for you just one of these quotes because this is what really gets at the heart of why the president imposed these specifically on Canada and Mexico. It says in this fact sheet, quote, "This tariff will remain in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasion of our country." Now, Jessica, to be clear, and we know this from what the president has said on this previously, that one of the main reasons he wanted to impose these steep tariffs is because he believes that both Canada and Mexico are not doing enough to crack down on the number of drugs and the number of migrants coming into the United States. So that's really at the crux of
So that's really a lie and a bunch of bullshit, because U.S. border control records prove that over 90% of all fentanyl arrests at the border are U.S. citizens trying to smuggle fentanyl into the U.S. Fuck Donald Trump. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's a serial liar. He's the worst kind of a sociopathic, sick son of a bitch you could have for fucking president, other than fucking Joe fucking the Mad Bomber Biden. Fuck Donald
that
Trump.
quote that I read you was at the very top of this White House fact sheet. And I do want to just note, too, to your point of how this could directly impact American consumers. Of course, this is something we have heard from Wall Street and economists warning about, but it's also something that the president acknowledged yesterday. He said that he believes that perhaps there could be some sort of short-term impact on American consumers. He said he hoped that people would be patient to see it through. But again, if prices begin to increase and Americans start seeing this directly hitting their wallets, of course, this is going to be a broader concern that the White House will eventually have to look at. Jessica.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that was the number one concern for American voters. And that key question is, Elena, will they be patient? And we will just have to wait and see how they react. Right. Elena Treen, thank you so much for that breaking news. We appreciate it. Still ahead, we are also waiting